Hey, Love and Life. We are here today with our intern who has been such a joy to work with this semester, helping us get back into a groove with the newsletter, which is coming soon, and also doing some social media and things that we've talked about on the program. I've talked with Elliot many times about just the pitfalls of social media. So we do need support. We need help. And Evelyn has been amazing and so conscientious and so on top of it, because you may have figured out, and Elliot reminds us all, that Elliot and I are a little bit more random and not quite as structured as probably would benefit this process. So we've got someone in place who has all those great qualities to keep us on track and in line. So Evelyn, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Karen, and hello, everyone. It's good to be here.
Are you a senior now?
I am.
Okay, shoot. I was hoping I could have you for another year. Yeah, so she's a Judson student, and like I said, it's been just a real pleasure to work with. And I asked her to join us today. Elliot wasn't available, but I'm actually kind of glad. That sounded bad. I'm not glad that Elliot's not with us, but it worked out for the topic that I wanted to address today anyway, to have another woman, a Gen Z woman, so that we can have the Gen X and the Gen Z perspective. Welcome to Love and Life. I'm Dr. Karen Anderson Abril, here with my co-host,
Pastor Elliot Anderson.
And Love and Life is your place to hear conversations grounded in psych research, psychotherapy,
and biblical truth,
to help us thrive in love and life. We're going to talk today about something that we've discussed on the podcast many times in various degrees, and I've had guests talk about this issue as well. But we're going to talk about it today from the standpoint of advocacy. I follow a woman named Jennifer Say. She is the founder of XXXY Athletic Wear, which I am proudly wearing right now, which I will stand up so everyone can see my shirt. So stand up, save women's sports. She is a former elite gymnast herself. And then in her professional career, when she retired from gymnastics, she became an executive at Levi's. So she was living in San Francisco. She kind of came into prominence in the dissident community because during COVID, California, of course, being one of the states that kept the schools closed for so long, she had young children. She knew the Zoom educational model was not working. So she started being very outspoken. And through this whole time when everything was crazy, she ended up losing her job at Levi's because she was speaking out against school closures. And then, of course, the mandates and the masks and all the things. So she came across my radar because I was also a dissident, as everyone knows as well. But now she's kind of going in the direction of, as a female athlete herself, going into this whole trans with boys playing against girls in sports. And she has founded, like I said, XXXY, obviously making the distinction on the genetic level that we are not the same biologically, and it's not fair to compete against one another. So she's taking a stand. She's worked with Riley Gaines. She's worked with Paula Scanlon, who was actually on the program a couple of years ago, the swimmer who competed against William Thomas it was on the same team with him at UPenn. All that to say, I really love her work, her advocacy to save girls' sports. And she's calling on tomorrow, being the 10th of October, 10/10, which is also XX, if you know your Roman numerals. She's calling on all of us to stand up and be more vocal about this issue. So Evelyn, I'm kind of approaching this. I think our community probably agrees with us that there's a biological distinction because, I don't know, science. But so we're not really trying to make that point necessarily, but just trying to invite others to maybe speak up more, maybe wear a t-shirt when you're in public. Gosh, and when you're in Chicago, which is what I try to do whenever we go to the airport, try to wear a t-shirt that might ruffle some feathers, but my heart is to invite people to consider, like, really, does this make sense? Is this fair to our young girls who are just trying to compete and earn championships and earn scholarships? And so that's the issue at hand. Evelyn, what do you think about this concern as a young woman yourself and as a woman from Gen Z?
Yeah, I think what Jennifer Say brings to the forefront here is that 80% of Americans are on the same page about this. Like, it's pretty plain and simple, that men just don't belong in women's sports. And so if 80% of us believe this, there's only really 20% that are against it. And I think that's crazy because it feels like so much that we're a minority here in this area, and we're not. It's just that the other side is so loud. And so I think that something that Jennifer Say mentions is that, like, we have the numbers on our side, and that's something that we can leverage. But so often we don't, because we're afraid of backlash or being called terrible names and, being ostracized or whatever. But I think that something that we need to consider is that if we speak up, more people will resonate with that than not. And other people just need that encouragement to stand up and say something.
Yeah, like I mentioned, throughout COVID, it started during COVID because I was so incensed with the tyrannical approach from the government, from forced masks, which we knew didn't work anyway, and which people wore on their chin anyway, to the forced vaccines, which was just completely unethical and, again, tyrannical. I couldn't even believe it. I'm like, I thought I lived in a free country. Apparently I don't. So I started wearing t-shirts that would say things like tested positive for critical thinking, or like big pharma is making a killing. Or, I had so many, but I would wear them. I still have them, and I still wear them. And I would wear them in quote unquote enemy territory. So we fly out of Midway, which is in Chicago, a lot for Dan's work. And I would just do that because for me, it helped me feel like, I don't know if it makes a difference at all, but in my head, I felt like, I'm taking my stance and I'm letting people know. And typically, to your point, even in the COVID era, which it wasn't this 80-20 that we're talking about here with this issue, they were probably certainly at an airport in Chicago. I'm sure I was like one of a small percentage of people who were upset about the COVID measures. And as a dissident, I'm sure most people were like, that's fine. We got to do this. It's safety. We're going to save grandma. But I find that people will give me the stink eye for sure. Like, you'll get stink eye, like maybe rolling their eyes and maybe a little irritated gasp or that sort of thing. But no one ever steps to me unless they agree with me. And then they'll say stuff like, hey, I like your shirt. Or, hey, I agree. And then I strike up conversations with people because, like you said, we think we're alone sometimes. And I'm walking through this airport in a blue state, in a big, very blue city. And then I find out, wait, there's a lot more people that actually agree with me.
Yeah. And it takes courage, especially in blue states, the liberal leftist agenda is very real, and there are people that you will run into, a lot of them in these areas where they are hostile. So it takes a lot of courage, but I think in the grand scheme of things, we just have so many other people that are on the same page. So
yeah. And again, you might be surprised, if anyone takes us up on our challenge to grab a shirt from XXXY. We don't have any connection to them. We've had one of the women, like I said, Paula Scanlon, she's been on the program just to talk about her experience and her advocacy in this area. So we're not getting any kickback or anything. I do invite people to consider it because, the first time you put it on, you're like, whoa, I'm entering a hostile environment. This could go a lot of different ways. Lucky for me, I have a big, strong husband who's by my side. So I'm always like, hey, did you go to the gym this week? Because you're going to have to protect me maybe. But you find that once you do it the first time, you actually go, like I said earlier, wow, there's actually more people who agree with us. And maybe, Dan always says, he's like, you think you don't make a difference, but maybe you've inspired someone else to be a little bit more bold and grab a t-shirt and put it on.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's what Jennifer was saying. She was saying that, and because, it came out, she had a new ad that she put out for her XXXY apparel. And the ad was called I'll Know. And it's just, she said, they spent no money on it. We tapped women who have faced backlash for speaking up in defense of women's sex-based rights to record. And so they had asked them who've had any backlash to record a selfie video explaining what happened when they took a stand. And so these are all these athletes from high school to the collegiate level, and certainly in professional sports as well. We saw that in the Olympics last summer. And so she said, she gave a couple bullet points in this recent Substack article she wrote, which is where I follow her. She said 80%, like you said, Evelyn, of Americans agree that women and girls deserve their own sports. And the vast majority remain silent out of fear of backlash. And they are waiting for others to take a stand, but we can't win without everyone taking a stand. Their fear is not unwarranted, as illustrated by the women's stories. So these girls, they share again, just taking selfie videos. And these women faced violence, social ostracization. That's a rough one. They had real life impacts. And again, so I'm Gen X, I'm bringing in the generation here. And I feel as a woman of my generation, it's incumbent upon me to advocate for your generation and for the girls younger than you, Gen Alpha, for those girls who are coming up in sports now. And it's so hard for me to understand how people don't want to advocate for these young girls. Haven't we always, and to your point about leftists, haven't people on the left always been the ones claiming that they want to protect women and believe women? And yet here they are just letting little girls have to lose their spot on the sports teams because a boy shows up and says, I'm a girl. And even worse, maybe, well, not worse, it's all bad. Like I just saw a video recently that was going around about some high school girl who's some sophomore in high school shows up in the girls' locker room and she's supposed to undress in front of him because he says he's a girl. Like, When did we stop protecting women?
Right. And it's an unfair thing to women. It's an inappropriate thing for women to have to be in these spaces with biological men. And then it's unsafe.
Yes.
And the only people that this is affecting is women. Because you have this biological difference where, men have a greater lung capacity, greater muscle mass, greater bone density. And when they come into these competitions, they pose a threat to women. If you had it flipped the other way around, where you have like a trans man, so a biological woman in men's sports, the chances of her like upsetting the standings of male athletes are generally low. Whereas if you have a biological man entering the women's competition, the chances of him dominating are very high. And so it really only affects women, and it's just terrible.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to understand, and I've had this question since this became an issue, which sometimes I'm like, am I literally having to have a conversation on a podcast about the fact that boys are boys and girls are girls? Like, I'm literally having to have that conversation. Like, never in my wildest dreams when I was your age did I think I would ever be having this conversation. When I was your age, it was very clear there was gender dysphoria. It was in the DSM, which was something that as a young psychologist in training, I was learning, you might have a client someday who says or believes that they're the opposite sex. But of course, that's not true. It's a delusion. Obviously a delusion. And as a psychologist, it's incumbent upon me to help my clients remain grounded in reality. That's what we do as therapists. We try to help our clients manage the reality of their lives and whatever trauma, whatever pain. I'm not saying these people aren't in distress, but I'm just saying, to me, it's misplaced empathy. First of all, it's unethical to affirm delusion. I firmly believe that. It's unethical as a psychologist. I put it this way, and I've shared this with the community before, but as a psychologist, if I have a schizophrenic client who tells me, I believe I can fly, do I affirm that? And then go, yeah, I affirm you. You absolutely can fly. You sure can. Let's go to the top of the Sears Tower in Chicago. I'll push you off because I affirm that you can fly. Give me a break. That's what we're doing. That is literally what we're doing. And we're not protecting women. So I call upon people on the left, which again, that's 80% of us. So that includes people on the left. I call upon all of us to find this common ground. I know there's a lot of areas that we don't have common ground, but if you care about women and you care about protecting them and allowing them to have spaces that are theirs, where they don't have to have penises in locker rooms when they're 15 years old, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
And it's sickening and it's abusive. So if you
Yes.
care about women, as I do, then I invite all of us to be more bold and to speak this whenever we have the chance. You may be like me and like, I'm going to wear my t-shirts every time I go to Midway Airport. Cool. If you want to, I would say, great. I'd love to see your t-shirt at Midway Airport when I run into you. But maybe it's just taking the opportunity when it comes into casual conversation. So for example, Dan and I we just got our license to be foster parents. So I'm getting calls all the time, and we're trying to find a fit for how we can help some little kids. And I got a call yesterday, and a woman said she had 3 kids to talk about with me. And she's like, one of them, she goes, what do you feel about LGBTQ plus AI, whatever? And I said, well, LGB is one thing. The T is another thing. And then I explained to her, and I just took the opportunity. I mean, this is a social worker. She's probably on the left. That's typically the type of people who identify with that kind of ideology. But I'm like, I have an opportunity because she asked me, and so I'm going to talk. And so I just explained the entire thing, and she's like, wow. I said, I'm a psychologist. I affirm reality. And she goes, and I gave the example with the schizophrenic and the flying. And she's like, wow, I've never thought of it that way. That was well put. Again, I'm not trying to berate. I'm not trying to debate. I'm just saying, you asked me a question. Here's what I think about that. And then we went on to another conversation. So maybe that's the way that would be easier for some people if they're not comfortable with one of these kind of, I call them my snarky t-shirts, but I don't really think they're snarky. They're really just an invitation to think.
Yes. Yeah. And when you talk to people and you use it's common sense. Yeah. And a lot of the time I think that they've been used to hearing, the same old things repeated over and over and over again, that they've never taken the time to consider how crazy this is. And they're told that, it's politically incorrect, it's insensitive, it's whatever to say that this isn't good. And so when you talk through it, like, yeah, this is a disorder just like anything else, and affirming it is harmful to the person, I think that can help them to think and be like, yeah, actually, that's true. So appealing to the common sense and logic is big.
Yeah. And I think, again, as you pointed out and Jennifer points out, when we have the majority of us, then we just have to realize that, like I said before, sometimes we are in the minority and we still stand on truth. We still stand on God's truth. And we still speak our mind and we still be bold. And I hope we do. And I know I want to be, because I believe that's what we're called to as Christians, to be that light in the darkness. In this case, the truth is apparent. 80% of us know it. And I think it's misplaced empathy. And that's where people get caught up. Because if you are of the opinion that it is harmful, like you were talking about, like we're of the opinion it's harmful to women and girls. And I stand by that. And I believe that. Other people will think, well, if you don't allow a child to identify whatever the heck they want to identify as, and you don't give them permission to start puberty blockers and the whole 9, then you are being harmful to them. So I would think it's a child abuse to affirm a child's delusion. They would say it was child abuse to not affirm. So I think that's where it gets sticky too. What do you make of that? How would you wrestle with that if someone in your world wanted to make that argument?
Well, something that I think is really powerful is like the personal testimonies of people who have gone through this stuff.
Yes.
And so you have people like Chloe Cole, who she went through as a child gender dysphoria, and then they told her follow that, pursue that, and she went on hormone blockers and she did all this stuff. I think she got a double mastectomy, all that stuff.
She did.
And coming out on the other side where she was in her late teens or early 20s, I'm not exactly sure which, but she realized that it was a mistake.
Yep.
And that she hadn't had an informed choice. They hadn't told her that they hadn't even impressed on her that this was permanent. And so I feel like the personal testimonies that when you're a child, you don't have the capacity to make such a huge choice. We don't allow children to get married. If they wanted to get married, like we don't allow children to make these choices that are not, that they're not able to make because they're too young. And so this is the same idea. And unfortunately, they don't accept the personal testimonies. Like she's been totally, the left doesn't like her. They don't listen to her testimony.
No.
Even when you have like women athletes who, they encountered a transgender athlete and it was, a bad experience, like in the MMA, where the one athlete, I think her name is Tamika Brent, she got her skull fractured by a transgender opponent. And as I was researching it a little bit, all the articles that were coming up were downplaying the injury, saying that this happens all the time. And they were actually defending the transgender athlete and saying that this is being blown out of proportion to attack trans athletes. And I think that's crazy because we're not listening to what women or the people for like transgender with children, we're not listening to what people who are actually experiencing this are going through. We're just trying to push an agenda and we're not seeing where the evidence, where it leads, and that it's harmful and that this isn't good. So.
And that is so true. And I think I've mentioned this on the program before, but I don't think you and I have talked about this. I did go down back in 2022, down to Nashville because Vanderbilt was doing a lot of these surgeries. And Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire, has been really big on this issue. He hosted a Stop the Genital Mutilation of Children rally. And Chloe spoke. And it was horrifying because we had a lot of counter protesters there. And they were horrible to her and screaming, F you, how dare you? Like, because they loved her when she wanted to be trans.
Yep.
And when she came back and shared her story of what she now looks at, who was protecting me? Her parents were told she'll kill herself if she doesn't get to become a boy. It's a lie. Research now shows that you're just as likely to kill yourself. In fact, more so, because a lot of kids are like Chloe, who wake up in their 20s like, what the heck? Who allowed this? Doctor after doctor was okay with this. Surgeons were okay with this. Removing my perfectly healthy breasts. She'll never be able to breastfeed her babies. I mean, who is the adult in the room? It is asinine and it is abusive. And so here she is sharing her story, and she's not alone. There are many. And these counter protesters, I can't tell you the vitriol. It was scary because they're dressed like, they look like Antifa, right? They're dressed in black and hoodies and masks because it's 2022. They probably still mask now because a lot of these people still think masks are a thing, or maybe they like the anonymity of it. And I think a lot of them are paid by these other factions.
Probably
because, for example, in your state, Governor Pritzker has like a first cousin, I believe, who is like 60, 70 something, who believes that he's a woman. And so he runs around town basically looks exactly like Governor Pritzker in a dress. Now that's a fun image, isn't it?
Yep.
For anyone who doesn't know, look up Governor Pritzker. But it's sickening and twisted. But so you do have these factions of society because a lot of these blue states, despite Trump putting these, you can't have boys playing against girls, that's an executive order, but it hasn't been to Congress to make it a law. It's an executive order, but a lot of these blue states like Gavin Newsom and I'm sure Pritzker, they're just not going to abide by it. Pritzker's got a personal agenda here. And the other agenda, let's not forget, pharma loses a client when Chloe decides she doesn't need to be on testosterone for the rest of her life because she wants to be a girl again.
Exactly.
So we have to factor that in, which everyone in Love and Life knows how I feel about pharma. And I take every opportunity to shout that from the mountaintops too.
Yeah.
But so it's very sad. Again, I go back to, I'm not a mother, but I have nieces. And I go back to that maternal energy that I feel as a woman. I want to protect young women. And I know men have that too, like men who are reasonable and like you said, common sense, they want to protect their daughters. I still don't understand how some of this has happened though, frankly, in some of these public schools that we haven't had like 15 dads just show up and yank that boy out of the girls' locker room. Like, just, we'll take this matter in our own hands. I'm not saying beat the kid up, but like, you're not going to undress in front of my daughter. You're just not. Like, I'm still confused why some men, but again, because this misplaced empathy, I think a lot of people have gotten caught up, and no one wants to be called a transphobe, and no one wants to have anyone give them the stink eye. I'm thinking, what's more important, being called a name or protecting girls?
Right.
I get so passionate. I can't help myself. It's just how I'm wired.
It's so important. It deserves to be, passionate about it. It really does. And back to your previous point, like about child abuse.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time, like, if children weren't being fed these ideas that, yes, you can be a boy if you want to be, or you can be a girl if you want to be, if they weren't being fed that through if curriculum or social media or TV, I really don't think that they would ever end up in a place where they're thinking, okay, yeah, I want to pursue this, and then going to a doctor who then, if the doctor was like, oh, actually, I think you're fine. You are, the way you are is good. If the doctor were to say that, the child would probably, it would be done. But because they are reaffirmed in this, it's not that they're coming up with this on their own.
Right.
It's something that the culture is pushing on them. And so, yeah, that's just a whole nother layer that came to mind.
No, and that's a great point. And I don't know if you're familiar with Abigail Schreier's work. She has written a book called Irreversible Damage. And she makes that point too, of the social contagion, that it becomes and I know Megyn Kelly, because I listened to her program a lot. She pulled her kids out of the New York's public school. Well, probably it wasn't public. I'm sure it was some Tony private school, but she pulled him out because her little guy was like in third grade or something. And they kept asking him every week, like, what are you? What are your pronouns? And you keep messing with kids' heads about, listen, childhood is hard enough. I mean, there's the social pressure at school, the peer pressure, there's all cliques, there's competing in sports and all the things that children go through, which is growing up is hard.
Yeah.
And then you put this nonsense in their head, and it kills me too, because when you think about, so I do have a lot of gay friends, and they very much think of these trans kids as like, well, I was a little boy and I was gay and I couldn't come out because social pressure at the time. And I'm thinking, well, let's say you got a little tomboy, like a little girl who's into sports, and she's a tomboy. In my day, she'd just be a tomboy. And a lot of them end up happily married and they still like sports, whatever. And then some end up being lesbians. Okay. So, all right. Well, now that little tomboy is going to be told, well, you're a boy. You're not a tomboy. You're not like just a girl who likes sports. So I don't even understand why the gay community has let the T's hitch their wagon to the LGBs, because let's be honest, it's basically saying that it's gay erasure. It's basically taking away, like, if you're gay, but then gender's fluid and means nothing, then you identify as I'm a woman who loves women, or I'm a man who loves man. What does that mean if gender's meaningless, if sex is meaningless?
And it's crazy because all these agendas that they're trying to push all at the same time are so contradictory. And it comes up over and over again. Like, you have this idea where, yes, gender doesn't mean anything, and yet they're trying to push gay marriage because gender, I'm attracted to this sex, and that's my whole personality, that's my entire identity, and yet that doesn't really mean anything. And then you got this whole idea of, they're saying, be who you are, embrace your inner self, and love is love and all this. But then they're also saying that in the transgender case, you're not okay as you are. You need to go outside yourself, change yourself. So it's just like all these contradictions.
Yes.
That they're pushing all at the same time, and it doesn't make any sense.
And it doesn't make any sense that we have a sitting Supreme Court justice who was asked during her confirmation hearing, what is a woman? She herself is a woman, and she said, I don't know. I'm not a biologist. Okay.
It's crazy.
That is insanity. And you ask these young girls, a lot of girls your age that are going to these big state schools or these little liberal arts colleges where they're getting this fed in every sociology class and psychology probably. Young girls your age will say, oh, I don't know. I don't know what a woman is. I mean, Matt Walsh had that movie and he asked a bunch of people and then he goes to Africa and some tribe that we would consider so primitive. And he asked that question and they start cracking up. They're like, what are you talking about? Why? So we're so sophisticated and civilized over here in the West, and we're dealing with utter nonsense. And I think it's by design, really. I think it's actually part of an anti-human dehumanization agenda too, which I don't even know where to go with that rabbit hole, but it does seem very anti-human. The way AI feels very anti-human, trying to let the computer, let the AI, let the zeros and ones, the digital, whatever heck's going on and technologically speaking, let them be smarter than us. It just feels like we're ripping away what it means to be human and what it means to be one of the fundamental aspects of humanity. Let me tell you this, which I thought was really funny because it seemed like this all came up, but I don't even know. It's not even been 10 years really that we've been dealing with this on a daily basis the way we are now. But about that same time is when people started doing their gender reveal parties. And I just thought it was very funny that this became a big thing, which it was never a thing when my friends were having children. It just became a new trend. Fine, whatever. But I just thought it was hilarious that they're going out and they're some big balloon pops and then, the pink confetti comes out and it's a girl. I'm like, well, we'll see how long. I mean, it's funny that trend took off just at the same time that what it means to be male or female was in question.
Yeah, it was perfect timing. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up, what do you think about, again, I don't usually do this. Elliot and I usually just talk. I mean, our content, and I don't usually say, hey, I don't usually have a call to action necessarily, but I kind of do right now. And again, I wish I had a connection with XXXY, because it'd be great to have them as a sponsor, but I don't. So this is not anything that's trying to line my pocket. This is really me as a woman speaking to anyone else who wants to protect girls and women and just saying, hey, think about wearing that shirt. Maybe think about having that conversation if it comes up in a calm, gentle, loving manner. What do you think about that? I mean, do you feel I don't know, generally speaking, and I don't know if it's Gen X, but you do see these differences just because of the way we were raised. We weren't raised on phones. So we don't have that same, the online presence, online bullying and all the social media that I just think is pretty destructive in general. But what do you think about that? Do you think that young women, young men even, will they be comfortable with that kind of call to action?
Well, I think it's something that people have to probably wrestle with because it is hard.
Yeah.
But I do think that people are ready to do something that matters and that makes a difference. I just feel like right now, specifically in light of everything that's been happening in the last couple of months, I think people are tired of how destructive the left can be in so many areas, in this one as well. And I think we're ready to not be silent and to be a voice against that, because nobody is pointing out, yeah, that's crazy. Women exist. They're a real thing. Trans women aren't women. And I think so. I think we're ready for that. I think people are ready to take a stand and to make a difference. And I think I would encourage people just to try to not consider how it will be received on the surface, but to recognize that our generation, and I think all people in general, regardless of, when you were born, are seeking truth and are seeking answers. And especially in the way that, conservative Christian values, they make sense. And they resonate with people on a deep level, even if they're trying to fight it in their mind. And so I think that just being willing to speak so that those people can hear the truth and hear the answers and find that if they would accept it. Because that's part of our call as Christians to stand up and to speak truth and love and go boldly. So, yeah, but I think we're ready to stand up and say something.
Yeah, I think, I was just glad to come across this this Substack post from Jennifer Say, and I thought, this is kind of a perfect time because it's something, like I said, we've talked about it on the program. I've had guests who've experienced this personally. Like I said, Paula Scanlon, another woman was Kara Dansky, and another woman was Isabella Malbin. And Kara and Isabella, they are those women who were from the left. They would consider themselves feminists, which I don't, because there's so much that's loaded with the term feminist. I'm super pro-life, and most feminists are pro-abortion. And Kara and Isabella, in a way, like you mentioned, the conservative Christian community, it's even maybe a little easier for us to be bold because I would agree. I would imagine most people agree with us. But when you go to these radical feminists circles, they are very, very pro-trans. And so these women they call them TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists. And that's considered a pejorative, although I would say that takes a lot of courage. And their whole point is, I've spent my whole life as a feminist trying to empower women, and then a guy shows up and he's a better woman than the women. It's like when they put Bruce Jenner on the cover, like Woman of the Year. It was like Glamour magazine or one of those. I was like, so the best woman this year was a guy. Wow.
Women have been erased. They're erasing us.
Exactly. Yeah. So when Jennifer made that post, I thought this is perfect timing. And again, so it's October 10th. And again, this is something that we're dealing with because Tim Walz is one of the governors in Minnesota. We just had the championship, I think it was this summer, a softball team that was going to whatever kind of championship. I think they were high schoolers. And there was a dude who was the pitcher, and he's just pitching the crud out of this softball team, and the girls can't hit because he's pitching it so fast. And so here we go. Again, a championship, a very average team all of a sudden won the entire state championship because they had a dude pitching. Wow. Women have been empowered women. Thanks, Tim Walz. You've empowered your girls in your state. Like it's ludicrous. But anyway, so this opportunity to take a stand, like again, Jennifer Say gives a call to action. So we're giving a call to action. All right. Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining me. And again, I encourage anyone, check out the XXXY Athletics website and see if there's a shirt. This one is Stand Up, Save Women's Sports. There's other ones that say, and it's interesting. We mentioned about gay erasure. There is a whole organization called Gays Against Groomers. So they're like, hey, I'm a lesbian or I'm a gay guy, but I don't want drag queen story hour. Like, don't be messing with kids' heads. This is grooming is what they call it, which is what you spoke to earlier. So this is something that wherever people fall on that issue, they can realize that there's common ground there. There's common ground with our radical feminists. There's common ground with people in the Gays Against Groomers community. So we can all stand together and speak out. So check out the website, grab a t-shirt. And so tomorrow I will be wearing my t-shirt all around town. I'll actually be in Chicago area because I have to pick up a friend at O'Hare.
Wonderful.
So I will I'll have a nice opportunity to stand bold and proud. And we invite anyone else to do the same. So thanks again, Evelyn.
Yes, thanks you for having me. Be bold, everyone. Do it. The women are counting on it, truly.
Mm-hmm. Evelyn, Elliot typically prays it out, as you know, but I'll go ahead because I feel so passionate about this and I really want to ask for God's strength in the midst of this. So God, we come before you as women, as your daughters, as women who care deeply for girls and for women and for men too, who are confused, or boys who are getting told that they're not who they are. They're not who you've designed them and wired them to be. It's a mass chaotic, it's a spirit of confusion and lies. And we know that does not come from you. We know that everything good and perfect and true comes from you. So we ask that we would all just get a little stronger, get a little firmer in our stance, and lean on you if we have fear about speaking up or wearing a t-shirt to invite people to think. We just pray that we would lean on you. We're not in this alone. You are always with us. You are out in front of us, making a way for us, and help us to see this not as, oh, I'm going to ruffle feathers, but really, I am standing in truth and love, as Evelyn said, speaking truth in love. And that's what we're doing. And so, God, I just pray that you would give everyone the courage and boldness and the confidence, knowing that we are your children and that we are on the side of truth. And thank you for loving us and giving us this ability to share your truth with the world and be a light in the darkness. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Love and Life with Dr. Karen and Pastor Elliot is produced by Tim May and executive producer, Dr. Karen Anderson-Abel. For more information about Love and Life, please go to loveandlifemedia.com.